Hey, it's Mark from Migraine Professional, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about how adrenal fatigue impacts migraines and tension headaches. And so it's important for us to understand that there's 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. The first one is stage 1. And so there's 2 kind of big players here. There's cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Whenever we kind of get scared or feel fear, or whenever our safety or security is threatened, or just in the morning, what causes us to wake up and gives us energy is cortisol. So it's a master hormone. It's incredibly responsible for sort of giving us energy and making us feel good, but also controlling regulation. But then when it gets really high, it gives us that stress response, that fight or flight response. So there's cortisol, and in stage 1, cortisol is very high, and sort of all of our other hormones that support cortisol, they're high as well. So we have the resources are there, and our stress is high. Our body's just kind of trying to deal with whatever is causing the massive amount of stimulation, the massive amount of stress, or whatever is causing us to kind of be hyperstimulated. That's stage 1. So once that's kind of progressed on for a while, once it's gone on, it kind of, the stress hasn't left for some reason, and everything's kind of still there and brewing, and you're not getting enough sleep, you're not eating well to balance your blood sugar, you're constantly under the state of tension, then you enter into stage 2. Stage 2 is when your cortisol is still high, so you still feel like you have energy, you're still out, you're still doing things, you're still trying to tackle whatever the problem is, but now you're kind of, all those supports for your hormones, they start going down. They start being used up. And so it's already gotten to that point where it's taxing the system, and it's kind of different for everyone. It depends on the resources they have, how big stress is, etc. So then the resources start going down. Things start to get they start getting kind of stressful. Like it's been going on for a while, it's not being resolved, and the body's starting to have a tough time coping with it. It's used up all the resources. And then you enter the next stage. And so stage 3 is once that stress has really, it's gone on for a while, your body cannot cope anymore, it can't deal with the stress, it can't provide the hormones you need to create and sort of give you energy to deal with stresses. It can't continue that fight or flight state forever. It's like if you're trying to lift off with the plane, you go full throttle. But you don't hold full throttle the entire flight. Once you get to cruising altitude, you ease off on that throttle. So instead, when you're in fight or flight mode, you're on full throttle. You can't do that all the time. You use up your resources. Once those resources get used up to, you enter stage 3 and your cortisol starts to drop. And this is where your energy just starts to drop into the ground. Everything kind of starts falling apart because cortisol is also an anti-inflammatory hormone. So then really bad things start happening. And so what cortisol is kind of responsible for, and what kind of happens during adrenal fatigue, is that the energy generation, as kind of stage 3 hits, the energy generation of your body and of your brain, of your neurons, you're not able to maintain the same energy that you used to. You feel low, you can't wake up, you don't have that boost in the morning, and then at night, your cortisol levels are off, you can't properly wind down, you can't sleep properly, everything starts kind of getting disturbed. And then, like we talked about, cortisol is a master regulator of inflammation. And so then inflammation goes rampant once the cortisol is gone, once you can't maintain that cortisol regulation. Inflammation goes wild in the gut, in the body, in the joints, in the brain, wherever your weak links are, whatever is kind of affected, or wherever there's infections, they kind of go wild. They're not being controlled anymore. And then the gut takes a big hit because the gut is very susceptible to stress. Because the first thing the body does when there's stress is it puts blood and nutrients into the sort of the extremities, because it wants to mobilize you, it wants to get you ready to fight that jaguar, fight that tiger, whatever the stress is. So then it takes blood flow out of the gut. And this leaves the gut very susceptible to problems, and so you want to be careful. And then sex. So our body has this amazing mechanism where it will it will take away your sex hormones and your ability to procreate when you're under a huge amount of stress. So naturally, this is This is a natural mechanism to keep you from procreating in a time whether there's famine or there's scarcity or something's going wrong. But what happens is that, like we talked about, so our DHEA, which kind of creates our cortisol, it gets used up creating cortisol, and then it can't make sex hormones anymore. So then all our sex hormones get sapped. We start getting things like PMS, mood issues. We start getting low libido. All these different sex hormone symptoms start popping up. And then we get dysfunction in our HPTA axis. And this is kind of along the way. This starts to kind of brew and develop. And so our HPTA axis is our Hypo-Pituitary Thyroid axis. So this is the axis between the glands in our body. And so the glands are like the master controllers of our hormones and our organs or our neurotransmitters. And so this entire axis starts getting dysfunctional. It can't regulate your mood or your appetite or your sleep or your energy levels or your strength and recovery. It can't manage those anymore. So it's really important that you kind of address adrenal fatigue, because it's a sign that your body is not coping with stress properly. You need to take off the load, the stress. You need to support the body in sort of repairing its hormones, repairing cortisol, and sort of building up its resources back. And so the way this kind of affects migraines and headaches is because all of these systems are interconnected with the brain. Energy generation is crucial inside of the brain to making sure that our neurons are healthy, that they can fire properly, that they're not misfiring, that we're not going through these states of cortical spreading depression where we're getting sort of blackouts in the brain. Inflammation is massive. If we already have a susceptibility in our brain, if we're a migraine sufferer, a headache sufferer, and there's a susceptibility there, then that inflammation that may be there, it gets to go wild. It gets let loose. Same with the gut. We know food sensitivities are massive in migraines, and that goes wild. We lose our oral tolerance to foods when stress gets out of hand and we can't cope with stress. So we lose our oral tolerance, and then everything becomes a trigger. And then sex hormones, we all know that time of the month, first day of your period, it's a migraine. So it's incredibly important that sex hormone regulation is there and we maintain sort of our sex hormones. And so let me know in the sort of the comments below. Let me know, what do you think? Do you notice a connection between your migraines and headaches and your levels of energy, your ability to cope with stress? Do you feel overwhelmed? And kind of all these different symptoms. Do you find they're connected to your migraines and headaches? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks. Hey, it's Mark from Migraine Professional. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe in the bottom left corner so that others can find this information as well. If you want to learn more about migraines than you've ever known before and how to deal with them, make sure to go to our website. Thanks.